Our last bill of the day is House File 2497, Representative Joachim, the Education Finance Bill. As you get settled up there, I will state the motion for you. Representative Joachim moves that House File 2497 be placed on the general register. And you have the A12 amendment. Should we move that straight away then, Representative Joachim?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members. Yes, I'd like to move the A12 amendment, and I can walk through it if you'd like.
That would be great. Please proceed, Representative Joachim.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The A12 amendment has a few different items in it. Lines 1.2 to 1.17 builds on the transparency that we've been doing with our grants management and just with tax dollars in general, and what you'll see in the A10 amendment. It includes a redefined reporting requirement on class sizes and student to adult ratios in our classrooms. It will provide important information going forward for us as we make policy decisions next year. Lines 1.18 to 2.2 is an addition to the streamlined compensatory aid uses that Rep. Feist worked on with our school district stakeholders. Line 2.3 removes the placeholder language regarding the grants. So we're removing that because we put a placeholder in. Better language y'all came up with, so when A10 passes, that'll pop back in as a new article. Line 2.6 to 2.3 is a portion of the language that was forgotten when we added funds and language around training paraprofessionals. And then line 2.14 is a technical clarification on administrative funds for your Grow Your Own program.
All right, any discussion to the A12 amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say no. The motion prevails and the A12 amendment is adopted. There's one more amendment. Representative Joachim, would you move the A10 amendment?
Yes, I would like to move the A10 amendment.
Wonderful. So the A10 is in front of us, and that is the grant management amendment that we've had on every bill thus far. So any discussion to the A10? Representative Joachim.
I did want to point out for folks that there's one addition to the grant language that we did on lines 2.14 to 2.18 that applies to legislatively appointed grants. And we've talked a lot about this since the OLA report. And what it does is it just requires that MDE to notify within 30 days the chair and ranking minority members of the legislative committees within the jurisdiction over the grantor's operating budget of a grant that they're postponing or foregoing, just so that we know, so we can make sure that we're watching out for that later. So that just adds more to the transparency that we're trying to achieve here.
Discussion to the A10. Representative Krisha.
And thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Chair Joachim. We talked about this on the House floor, and I think this also speaks to getting us back as and retaining some of our purview in the legislature. So thank you.
Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just wondering, is this a really great provision? I'm wondering if that's going to be found in all of the bills going forward. That's great that we get notified that something is stopping.
Representative O'Neill, I mean, we certainly could entertain that for future amendments, and the bills will also go to conference committee, and I know the Senate is doing something similar on their side too, but it's different, so I imagine there will be a chance to continue to work to improve this language as it moves through the process, but I think that's worth noting. So thank you, Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for your input.
Any more discussion to the A10? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say no. The motion prevails and the A10 amendment is adopted. And so to your bill as amended, Representative Joachim.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And members, I'm extremely excited about this bill, but I will try to be brief. The bill before you was crafted by members of the House Education Finance Committee and the House Education Policy Committee. With this proposal, we make historic investment in our schools. We ensure that the learning environments in our school communities work for all of our students and ensure that our teachers, our principals, our administrators have the tools that they need to meet students where they're at. We've had over 20 years of underinvestment in our classrooms. We cannot change that overnight or even in one biennium, but this bill is a really great start. Our proposal stabilizes school funding, supports the health and well-being of our students, works on equity and innovation in our schools, increases career pathways and connections to our local communities, as well as builds up and diversifies our workforce. Members, in this bill, you will find investments in our schools to stabilize their budgets so that they can actually plan for the future. I will just hit a few highlights of those. We increased the general education formula by 4% in the first year and 2% in the second. We also index the formula to inflation, and that has a 3% cap in the second biennium. And this is really what provides the stability for those districts going forward. I did check our inflation trends for Minnesota in the last 3 years. We've only been over 3% twice, so I don't think they're going to hit that cap often, but I think it's a great way for districts to look ahead and plan. And with planning comes efficiencies, so we hope that happens. The bill tackles 50% of the special ed cross subsidy by 2027 tackles 100% of the language learner cross subsidy. The proposal also increases the transportation sparsity aid from 18.2% to 40% in order to help school districts who have to transport students very long distances. And we think of this as a greater Minnesota issue, and I've been up to the bus barn in Ely and know that literally if you took a map of the metro over the area they're busing, it goes from St. Michael to Stillwater. That's how big of an area they're busing students. But this happens, sorry, I'm getting a sub call. I forgot to block off my time. But this happens in the metro area too. Forest Lake has this issue as well as others. So this is an important provision that Representative Hill brought to us. In this bill, there are a variety of ways that we invest in the health and well-being of our students. We put just over $11 million in the first biennium and money into the base for the expansion of full-service community schools. We invest in increasing our school support staff, our social workers, counselors, psychologists, and school nurses, as well as invest in money for a pipeline for that same workforce. It's hard to hire them if they don't exist. We also have the money in here for our youngest learners, as Representative Pinto meant, breakfast funding to expanding the number of voluntary pre-K seats. We use an entire article in this bill to focus on literacy, using Representative Edelson's READ Act as a base and blending it with the Governor's BOLD Act proposal so that the package works for our students in our schools. And I want to thank Representative Edelson for the countless hours that she's worked over the last year to get this to work, and it does work great for our districts. It also includes money for teacher training and, more importantly, for districts to have curriculum grants. There are a variety of innovative ways that we invest in our schools' academic climate with a variety of small grants. We also provide funding to help schools teach to the upcoming social studies standards in the area of Holocaust and ethnic studies, as well as begin work around financial literacy and computer science. We build connections with community by investing in our after-school programming, community education, adult basic education, and our regional and county libraries. There are investments in career and tech education for a variety of careers in EMS and STEM, aviation and ground transportation that Representative Krisha brought us. And I want to thank Representative Pulowski stepped out for a sec, but I want to thank him for the joint hearing we had with higher ed to really dig into that CTE and that connection with our higher ed institutions. We also provide additional money to our consortiums across the state to help coordinate that increased investment in CTE programming, because sometimes our schools don't have the capacity to figure out those public-private partnerships or find equipment, and this will help. The bill provides money for our schools' infrastructure, both human and physical. There are dollars to increase teachers of color and Indigenous teachers in our classroom, as well as increasing our workforce in special education. We provide money to Professional Educator Licensing Standards Board to streamline the portfolio process and policies to make it easier for teachers to stay in the classroom in areas, especially where there are areas of shortage. We also provide money to increase training for our paraprofessionals, ESPs, and provide added time for our special education teachers to complete IEPs. And finally, we provide funding to the Minnesota Department of Education to build up our MTSS and COMPASS program, and more importantly, to develop an Office of Inspector General to increase oversight of state dollars that go into our schools. Members, this is a well-balanced bill that reaches every single corner of our state and is something that we can be proud of, and I would ask for your support and now stand for questions.
Thank you, Representative Joachim. Discussion to the bill. Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chair Joachim, I appreciate all the detail, but you didn't say like how much everything cost, because that's sort of what we look at here. As you know, you're on the committee. And I'm wondering maybe some of the high level ones, like the 4 and 2 on the formula, special education cross subsidy, some of the big ones, can you just let us know not only what the increase is, but the total amount that we are now spending as a state. 'Cause I think that gets lost. Chair Joachim, is we talk so much about, well, this is we're adding to the base, but we hardly ever talk about what the base is. So I think what's super important in one of these really, really big budget areas, HHS is the other one. The third is higher ed, which is a surprising one, I'm sure. But if you could talk about first what the total increase for the bill is over base, and then what the total number is. So base plus the increase, and then maybe a couple of the big budget items. That'd be super helpful.
Well, first I want to
Representative
point out that you do, thank you, Madam Chair, sorry about that. First, I just get so excited, especially about spreadsheets. So you have some great spreadsheets in your packets. One will have the entire appropriation sheet right there for you, so you can see where we're spending the money. Another one is a better breakdown of it for 24, 25, and 26 and 27. But even more importantly, what might be of interest to you folks is how much your districts are getting. So we have some preliminary runs here with the difference per pupil just for the general education and special education amount that we increased in this bill. What you got to remember with education funding is it's built on a formula. And I'm hoping to look at the formula a little more closely this summer because it does get very complicated. We have a base funding, like you said, for every student in the state that's $6,863. And then you have about 14 different categoricals on top of that that really drill down on the specific needs for our kids, whether it be money in special education, ELL, transportation subsidy. We have compensatory aid in there. We have a lot of different categoricals that help really focus on what that specific child is. And then with that, there's also interactions with our school districts and the levies that they do. We went through taxes because we have to be levy neutral. So anything we do that affects one of the levies that has a property tax, we actually have to neutralize in taxes with aid. So that's kind of the overview of it. But when you talk about what the base is, over base, we had the target of 2.214 in the first biennium and 3.2 billion in the second biennium. And that's important to look at because what you have to remember is that like many of our areas, ongoing money is what's really important, especially when it comes to kids because they grow up and they go through the system and they matriculate and we need money to do that. So what you should also understand is though it sounds like a really big number, indexing the formula to inflation, doing the 4 and 2, doing 50% of the SPED cross-subsidy, and then also tackling the ELL cross-subsidy is over 85% of that budget. So that is the bulk of our bill that's there. And all the rest of the stuff we do is super important too, and that's why, you know, while it might have sounded glamorous and like a great bumper sticker to like pay for the entire SPED cross subsidy, that would have left us with nothing else that we could accomplish. And we all know how important it is to make sure that our kids can read. And that's our literacy portion. That's about $100 million. We have the transportation sparsity. One provision I've carried that I've been trying to get across the line for years is our extended time revenue to make sure our intermediate districts can tap into extended time revenue for kiddos that are in treatment or in our correctional facilities so they can continue their education. So there's a lot of other little things, but just in general, the 3 top things we do is about 85% of that, above base budget, and mostly into ongoing. There also is important to know with special education, you have what's called a maintenance of effort. So whatever you spend in the first biennium, you can't spend $1 less in the second. So you have to make sure the money is there to go forward.
Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, that was a lot, but I really just asked for something super simple, which you didn't say. So I'm just going to help you out a little bit. So from the spreadsheets, which of course we all have, but this is a public testimony, a public hearing, and people are watching. They don't want to dig through a bunch of spreadsheets. So yes, 2.215 billion. So 2.15 billion is the increase over base, and the total spending of the total bill is 23.173 billion. So just a little over 23 billion. And then in the tails, as you did mention, the tail spending is 3.2 billion, over base with a total spending of 24.4 billion. And those are the things that we don't talk about a ton. You know, if you read what's in the media, and we don't talk about the total spending. And I think it's important, and that doesn't even count the direct appropriations from the federal government, like you talked about, local levies, all that that's just general fund money. One of these days, we should probably talk about all funds, and I don't know if you have an all funds number of what we're spending. That's probably rather incredible. We don't normally talk about all funds in here very much. It'd be a conversation we probably should have, especially on these really big bills. You know, your bill is a huge bill. It's the second largest that we spend money on, depending if you look at the general fund or the all funds. But if you want to, then since I've kind of filled in some of the big overall numbers for people, if you could just let us know those two big buckets. I don't think you even mentioned like what we're spending over base, but if you could tell us what the increase is and then what the total spending is in those two big buckets, which is the percentage, the 2 and 4, or 4 and 2, I think it is actually, and the cross subsidy for special ed.
Representative Joachim.
Thank you, Chair Olson, and thank you for reminding us all how important education funding is. You're right, it is for almost 40% of our state budget, and trust me, I got a lot of gray hairs over the last few months thinking about that. But it is important because our educated workforce is what's going to attract people here. It's what makes sure that we can live long, healthy lives. So, and it's actually constitutionally mandated that we fund public education in our state constitution. So when it comes to the 4% and 2% on the formula and indexing to inflation, in the first biennium, it's $704.996 million, and in the second biennium, it's $1.344.369 billion. So that second biennium number is bigger because we index to the inflation with the 3% cap. And then when you look at this special education cross subsidy, now just as a reminder too, this isn't the full funding for special education. This is just the differential between what the federal government and what the state government has given and what actually it costs. Because when the IDEA Act came in the late 70s, which was important, it told us that all of our kiddos should be able to learn in the least restrictive environment. It's a federal mandate. Doesn't always come with money. Federal government said, we know it's going to cost more money to educate certain kids. So here, we promise we'll give you 40%. State said we pick up 40. School districts were expected to pick up about 20. Well, the feds have never given us more than 17%. State kind of ebbs and flows. We don't always hit that top cap too. So that cross subsidy is actually the difference between what districts are spending and what they're getting. So I'm talking so long because I'm trying to find it exactly on my spreadsheet, and I have it a bill builder that I have.
I think it's line 1.6.
I'm looking at the wrong
165,
spreadsheet.
right? Or somewhere in there.
Where's line 1 point what?
Or no, 165 in the
Thank you.
spreadsheet.
Thank you,
That's fine, Chair. I just want to get in here.
Line 170. Here we go.
170.
So in the first biennium, so we do 47.8%. It sounds strange. I say up to 50 because it actually, that's that maintenance of effort I was talking about. It's $729,863 million in the first biennium. In the second biennium, it's $843,726. If I'm looking at the right number here. Yep.
Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just think it's important when we bring these big bills that we talk about the full expense. And, I don't know, Madam Chair, if you have any rules or thoughts about talking about all funds at some point with these big bills, it might be helpful. There's a lot of, I don't know if we ever do that in here, but at some point it would be, at some point somewhere, we should talk about all the funds that are going for these areas, because there's, it's a lot of money. And I don't even know what K-12 education, all funds is anymore. I looked back before pandemic to see what it was, but I know we're way past that. And it gets kind of convoluted because the federal government poured in so much money for COVID and everything. So it's hard to know exactly, but you wouldn't happen to know that the total spending in all funds for this budget area?
Representative Joachim.
Chair Olson, I don't have that at hand, but we have amazing nonpartisan fiscal staff that I know that could find that number.
Thank you.
It does get complicated, though, with special education funding because we're funding kids, and kids change, numbers change, so it's hard to find that exact number sometimes.
Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's just something that it's always a good thing to talk about. MMB has those numbers and they report those numbers. That's where I got it from pre-pandemic. So, it's just helpful. Again, a full picture is good and appreciate that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Further discussion. Representative Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just wanted to get on the record. Some of you saw I was talking to Ms. Adrians over here. I've never seen a spreadsheet with this many italics, underline, and indentations. And if you look on the first line of the 9-page spreadsheet, the 2023 legislative K-12 House Education Finance Omnibus, it says down there at the very bottom, because I'm looking at this going, what does all this mean? And it does say, it's kind of like a key, it says the underline equals a shifted program, and then the italicized and indented equals a new proposal. And I'm like, there's several levels of indentation as you go on. And so I'm just wondering if Ms. Adrians could explain the breakdown of those indentations and what those signify and so forth throughout this spreadsheet. Thank you.
Ms. Adrians.
Madam Chair and Representative Scott, I might have, Ms. Beckel is our expert fiscal analyst in all things education, so.
Thank you, Ms. Beckel. Welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself for the record and proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. Solveig Beckel, House Fiscal. Yes, so when I say italicized and indented new proposal, I'm just trying to help you identify the proposals that are new in the bill in this spreadsheet. If you refer to the other spreadsheet that says change items only, those are just exclusively those new items in the bill. So those are only the italicized and indented items. And the underlined items are shifted items, which for those of you who know the education area well, very complicated situation where we pay 90% of the current year entitlement in the current year and then 10% of the prior year's cleanup payment in that current year.
Representative O'Neill.
No.
I'm sorry, Representative Scott.
That's all right, thank you. And thank you for that explanation. I'm not seeing a spreadsheet, and maybe I've misplaced it, that's exclusively the change items. I don't know if other members, I have the,
Representative Scott, I don't think we have that. They may have been in the Education Committee had that, but we just have essentially the runs and the full funding, the spreadsheet that you're referencing. So I think Ms. Beckel may be referencing something that was in the Education Committee. Yeah. And we could get that, we'll get that out to you and everybody on the committee. So, but thank you, Ms. Beckel. Representative Scott.
thank you, Madam Chair. And Ms. Beckel, I don't know, I'm assuming you have that spreadsheet in front of you, but I was going through, trying to tally on each page the number of new proposals, and maybe you can help me out and just, if you have totals on how many new proposals and the total dollar amount of those new proposals, that would be helpful.
And I'll just add too, it was posted on, it is on the Ways and Means website. I'll go to this, but just to the point about the document, it is on the Ways and Means website. It was not printed in our packets, but it is there. So if you go there, it is part of our documents for today. So Representative Joachim.
Chair Olson, I just wanted to briefly just jump in before Ms. Beckel goes on. When we say new programs, this is a change sometimes to what a program we currently have as well. And we just wanted to make sure people saw when things were above base or shifted. So they're not necessarily all new programs. So thank you.
Ms. Beckel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Scott, I'm afraid I would have to get back to you. There are a number of items that are part of the same proposal, but are listed as separate lines on the spreadsheet because they might be part of the general education aid in one area and then part of the special education aid in another area, but comprise the same policy proposal. So I actually do not have that count, but I can certainly get that for you.
Thank you.
Representative Scott.
I'm good. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Further discussion. Representative Edelson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I sat on Education Finance, and I just want to thank Chair Joachim for running a great committee. Education Finance policy is incredibly complicated. And all the fiscal staff and the staff that worked on this bill did a wonderful job. The 4% and the 2% is a great it's a good increase for the formula. But I really want to talk about the inflation piece and what that means for districts. I've been here at the legislature for 5 years, and every single year schools are coming and asking for us to increase their funds. And when there's times where we don't pass legislation like we have historically, when we had divided government, that when we wanted a supplemental budget, it couldn't happen. I just think that's a great way to do it. The ELL cross-subsidy, looking at the special education cross-subsidy, you do such a great job in addressing this. And so thank you so much. And also, I would just encourage people, if you're not on education finance, Tim Strom can pull runs for your district. They're really helpful. And every one of our districts, I think, is rooting for this bill to pass this year. So thank you.
Thank you, Representative Edelson. Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Chair. And I just want to thank Chair Joachim for the preschool provisions in the bill. I referenced them in my own budget presentation, but 9,000 4-year-olds who would not otherwise have preschool this fall, and many of them from very low-income backgrounds, are going to have that as a result of this. 4,000 slots that keep expiring every 2 years and will now be made permanent, plus another 5,000 new ones. The opportunity gaps we see in our K-12 schools start in the earliest years, and the four-year-old pre-K slots in this bill, plus the scholarships for younger kids and the Children and Families Bill. I'm just so excited and really grateful to Chair Joachim for bringing that along as part of this budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Pinto. Representative Grisha.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Chair Joachim. And again, thank you for always be open to conversation. We had lots of good conversations. And through that, just on a side note, I got to hear a little bit about the excitement of the wedding you had last week. And again, congratulations on that.
I think everybody did.
As well it should be. So that being said, so yes, the Education Finance Committee was very professional, very cordial, and run very well. I have heard more about this bill than I have in education finance bills in the past. And interestingly enough, usually I go back to the districts during the break and I talk to schools in our area that I represent, as well as lots of the schools contact us as being a lead, whether it's minority or majority. Schools tend to gravitate with conversations. And I can speak more from the conversations that I've heard. There is a lot of hand-wringing yet and a lot of uncertainty around the many, many provisions that are in here. Certainly the financing piece is there. And if I were to offer and be an amendment on the House floor, I would propose that we would go more to just a 5 and 5 and more flexible funding. That didn't happen on this side, and what I worry about, or at least the pause that I have, is we do have shortfalls in the academic side. We do have shortfalls in the reading and the math, and the concerns that I've heard from schools, and this is just not making this up and going out and reading it, the legitimate concerns is they're more worried about how they're going to be focusing on solving all the very many new programs and mandates that are in here, and how that's going to take time away from them trying to solve the academic issues. And that's just what they brought up. And when I just go through the short list that I have of concerns for this bill yet, and there'll be more robust discussion on the House floor, but the renewal of the school board and operating referendum, why is that a concern? I know many school boards and superintendents think that's a great idea. However, on the other side of that, we are now coming through an inflationary period that we're trying to get under control, heading to a recession, and we have taxes and fees and all the other bills. All the people of Minnesota are hearing about is increased fees. And I can tell you, at least in the districts that I represent, many of the rural ones, while they may pass operating referendums at a high rate, they have those conversations. And I am very concerned about the deteriorating conversations between school boards and the parents, because we're starting to move away from the, hey, we're all in this together, to this divisive environment. And honestly, as people look at their property tax statements and they start to look at all the other fees and other things that may come up, if they see a school board just authorizing an operating referendum that has tax implications without going to the voters and having that conversation, I think there's a loss of democracy. And I'll just say, there's going to be divisiveness in there. We are seeing divisiveness at unprecedented levels. I think as I go through the other pieces, that divisiveness continues to carry through. I had many teachers contact me and say, why are we doing this class size thing? And superintendents and administrators saying, why is that in the state legislature? They said, we're already dealing with that. We're already talking about that. Nobody wants class sizes out of control, but we're dealing with what's in front of us. And so here we are with class sizes or with some of the benefits, and we seem to be getting in the middle of labor conversations that have frankly been happening in our school districts. And everyone knows if there is disagreements in a later, the right to strike exists and all of that. Those conversations can happen, but there is a real fear that we're tipping to one side or the other, and at a state level, we're starting to create an imbalance there. The discipline thing, I've heard more about the way that the discipline rules are being handled. Again, principals who've normally come to me and said, hey, just vote for the education bill, we need it. Even though I may say, well, I think we can do these areas different, but they, for the first time, coming and saying, we have real concerns about how those rules are going to affect the way I do jobs. The Pelsby piece, the reforms around that, and I don't understand that one, because even the articles that have come out, even teachers in color, there's many that are saying, hey, this is closing off some people's access into the teaching profession. And so that seems to be a fight that is more special interest group related versus actually getting teachers into the classroom. So I have concerns on that. And I'll just end, the ethnic studies one, that's out there. Even the access to menstrual products. I heard more from schools and teachers saying, why are we doing this? We are already handling this. We understand that students go through these situations and there's biological dignity that we need to, but why does the state have to tell us to do? And what the undercurrent, as I was thinking about this, as I started to think about the why, what they're really saying to me is, why don't you trust us? I'm doing my job. I go in every day. I know these kids in my classroom. I know which ones have struggles at home. I know which ones have issues with home life. I know which ones are doing well. But what they're really saying to me, and I remember from being a teacher, being in the teacher's lounge, one of the things that we used to say was, what are those suits going to do to us next in St. Paul? I am now that suit. And when I'm back home, I hear this constantly. They're saying, Ron, why are you doing this to us? We know what's best for our kids. We know how to teach. They're asking for fair funding. They're asking for those things. And I think in a lot of ways, you put that funding here. That's there's no question about it. It's a very large increase in the formula and all that. But what the concern is, and just expressing from the many emails and phone calls I've got, is the delta of what that funding increase is going to offer versus paying for all the other mandates up. And, this is not me coming up with talking points. These are emails I'm getting for superintendents who are saying, when I run those numbers, I don't see much of an increase. And so I think that those are some conversations that I hope are had as this goes into conference committees. But I will just state from the people that have contacted me, and I'm sure everyone has heard those, I dispute the comment that was made up that all the school districts are looking for this. Right now, the school districts, unless they're saying something different to other people than they're saying to me, I'm not seeing all the school districts are super excited about everything in this bill. And this is a personal side of this, but I still think there are issues with perpage, and I would like to continue to look at that. I wish we weren't just funding them. There's been issues with the staff. There's been issues with lots of turnover. Maybe those have been resolved, but I don't have an indication they have yet. So those comments are by no means anything disparaging against you, Chair Joachim. You've been great to work with, and I appreciate that. As I said early on in the Education Committee, you were going to have a very difficult job, and I think you still do. And I wish you well with that. I can't vote for this bill.
Thank you. And we have nobody else seeking recognition, so I will go to Representative Joachim for final word on your bill.
Thank you, Chair Olson. And just, I don't want to stand between people and lunch, but I do want to just make some few clarifying comments. The why don't you trust us? I have been a local official. I understand that. And that is why I'm excited about Representative Frazier's bill to renew the existing operating levy. If they go $1 more, they still have to go back to the voters. And the vote of, I think you called it desperation, I think is where it's coming from, where districts are like, just vote for the bill, we need the money. That is because of years, decades of chronic underfunding for our schools, where they were basically coming to us and saying, we'll take what we can get, just please give us money. I think that's also why you've seen an increase of operating levies. Operating levies were supposed to be the icing on the cake. They were never meant to be the batter. But when we underfund schools, they have to go to their taxpayers. We had the Minnesota Miracle 1.0 because we didn't want to have a child's zip code depend on how they're educated. We shifted over to state general money because of that very issue. Over 80% of our school district's budgets, almost 85, come from our general education funding, so that they shouldn't have to rely solely on property taxpayers to make up the rest. It should have been for the extras, for the bells and whistles, to enrich their kids' education. And like I said, over years, it's become the cake batter, it's become bake sales, it's become things that they have to do to just make it by. So that is part of the desperation. And that's what we're trying to do, is stabilizing their funding. Adding that index to inflation will take some of that desperation away. So when they do come up for asking for more money, which they will, I'm not naive, I know they still will, because it takes more than one biennium, by the way, to turn around 20 years of underfunding. We can have those real conversations about what are you going to do with that money, so that we can figure out how to address the needs of our students. Because I'll tell you a dirty little secret, we fund kids, not systems. That's what we should be doing here. And our schools do amazing work. We all saw that during COVID. Meeting students where they're at, trying to make sure that they are well educated, because you know what? They don't just come in pieces into our classrooms. It's not like the show Severance, where you walk into an elevator and it wipes your brain when you go to work, and you can concentrate, and you get back on the elevator and it wipes your brain before you go home. But our system has been set up to make our kids do that. Our youngest learners who don't have the tools or the capacity to forget and leave everything behind. That's why it was so important, and I want to thank Representative Jordan and everybody here that voted for the universal meals. That is just one example of making sure our kids have what they need to learn. It's hard to learn how to read when you don't know if you're going to have lunch that day. It's really hard to learn math when you don't know where you're going to sleep at night. And the investment we make in literacy here is so important, because K through 3, you learn how to read so you can read to learn. And our kids are behind, and they need our help. And I know you agree with me on this, Representative Kusha. You guys had a whole press conference on literacy. It is important, and we make that investment here because there's actuarial studies. They actually figure out, they look at a state's third grade reading level, and they can figure out in 10 years how many prison beds they need. This is important, folks. This is important. And the access to mental products, that was driven by students for that biological dignity. And guess what? We fund it. We fund that. The non-exclusionary discipline, we fund training because we saw an issue 6 years ago that was brought forward by the Department of Human Rights in how many students are excluded from the classroom for things that have nothing to do with physical or violent behavior, just attitude. You know, and as a paraprofessional, you know, I get that because I work with some pretty tough kids. You have to be the Q-tip Quit taking it personally. You have to be able to look at kiddos and say, what's going on today? Instead of what's wrong with you? So that non-exclusionary discipline piece is super important, and we fund it. We fund it. The SPED paperwork, that's a new mandate, an hour 0.25 a week for extra time to fill out paperwork. We fund that. We fund that as well. I keep hearing about all these like unfunded mandates. Nobody's really given me a list. The lists I've seen that I've gotten emails from, and I have, and I know all of you have too, are things that aren't even in the bill. They're still talking about the para bill of rights. We did not put $25 an hour for a para in there. They're talking about the UI insurance. I understand that, but districts are different. They actually do a reimbursement. So they don't have a rating. They don't have a tax that they pay into UI. They just reimburse the account for what money they've spent. And it's our hope that districts actually hire those workers back in the summer so that they can help catch our kids up, so that they can do summer school. And if they offer those paras or those hourly workers a job, guess what? If they turn it down, they don't qualify for unemployment. So we didn't want to park money into an account that we don't, that they're not going to touch or don't know how they're going to touch. We put it on the formula instead. So we give them maximum flexibility for that. And then I just have to address the PELSB, the Professional Educating Licensing Standards Board, lovingly called PELSB. There is a lot of misinformation about what we're trying to do with the licensure system. We close a small door and we take off the roof. We put money into the portfolio process so districts can help their Tier 1 and Tier 2 teachers with their personalized professional development in their school districts move to the next level instead of thinking of them as disposable. Because we can't afford to not have an adult in the classroom because we're desperately lacking. Tier 1 and 2 special ed pipeline, I'd like to thank Representative Bennett for her work on this because Tier 1 and 2, the federal government has sent us a letter saying unless you move those to Tier 3, we're taking money away. So we think the cross subsidy is bad now. If we don't move those teachers into Tier 3, it's going to get worse. So there's a lot of stuff in here that we have to be partners with our school districts on. And I know you keep talking about trust, and I do trust them. I do trust them. They have election certificates, our school districts do. I have met with all the education folks around here, from Minnesota Rural Educators Association to the Association of Metropolitan School Boards to the Minnesota School Boards Association to Minnesota Association of School Administrators, and the whole alphabet soup every other week as we put this bill together. The stakeholders and I have been in constant communication, and I want to thank Representative Creasha for also meeting with me almost every other week so we could always touch base and see what's coming forward. And I just want to thank, too, the nonpartisan staff. Like, I couldn't do this without them. Just thank all the members that put input and time and energy into these bills, signed on as co-authors. Guys, this is your bill. This is your bill for all your districts. It has a lot of good money in there. And I look forward to your support on the floor because we can't afford to have our districts be in desperation, have to keep coming back again and again and begging for us for money to do what they're already trying to do for our kids, which is create a better Minnesota for all of us and an educated workforce we can be proud of. So, members, thank you.
Thank you, Representative Joachim, for your final words and all your work on this very important bill. And so with that, Representative Joachim renews her motion that House File 2497 as amended be placed on the general register. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no.
No.
The motion prevails and House File 2497 as amended has been placed on the general register.